Pregnant wife visits doctor, only to see millionaire husband supporting mistress at prenatal checkup. Lia Henderson thought she had the perfect life, a dedicated husband, Darren, a growing business empire that kept them comfortable, and a long-awaited child on the way. Yet her entire world tilted off its axis the day she walked into Dr. Cynthia Myers' clinic for her prenatal checkup. In a single moment, all her dreams of a bright future shattered when she found her millionaire husband standing by another woman's side, supporting a pregnant mistress. What followed was a heart-wrenching journey of deceit, heartbreak, and unexpected alliances, as Lia desperately fought for her dignity, her baby's future, and the truth behind Darren's betrayal. Lia Henderson woke up to the sound of raindrops peppering the windows. The morning light crept through the half-drawn curtains of her Manhattan penthouse, illuminating the carefully curated decor Darren had insisted upon when they first moved in. Modern art on the walls, sleek leather couches, and a panoramic view of the city that seemed to stretch into forever. Everything whispered of their wealth and success, but also, quietly, of an emotional distance that had been growing for months. With a heavy sigh, Lia pressed a hand to her growing belly. She was 20 weeks pregnant, and each day brought a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. This pregnancy felt like a fragile gift after years of trying, tears, and whispered prayers. Darren's behavior lately, however, made her second-guess the bliss she was supposed to be experiencing. The day before, she had discovered a suspicious receipt in Darren's gym bag. It was from a luxurious spa called Eternity Wellness, a place she had never visited nor heard of him mention. Lia's mind was a swirling sea of doubts. Why was he there, and who was he with? Outside, thunder grumbled, and she pulled a robe around her shoulders. Down the hall, she heard Darren pacing in his study again. For the past 2 weeks, he'd had multiple late-night phone calls and urgent business trips, rarely offering any explanation. When questioned, he brushed it off with a curt, "I'm handling an important merger." Still, Lia remembered the once attentive man who serenaded her on their anniversary with a small jazz band he'd hired to play in their living room. She recalled the gentle way he'd hold her hand whenever they crossed the street. Where had that man gone? Stirring from her thoughts, she placed her hand on the doorknob to Darren's study, hesitating. The faint hum of his voice on another phone call bled through the wood. "Yes, Chloe, I know," Darren said, his tone hushed yet urgent. "I'll be there soon. Calm down. Of course, it's important to me." A knot twisted in Lia's stomach. Chloe? The name sounded familiar, like an echo from a half-forgotten memory. Before she could gather the courage to confront him, Darren ended his call with a sharp click. The room fell silent. Lia quickly backed away and hurried down the corridor. She didn't want to face him just yet. A wave of nausea, part pregnancy hormones, part raw fear, hit her. She rushed to the bathroom, feeling the morning sickness that sometimes arrived late. As she knelt by the toilet, tears seeped from her eyes. She was both terrified and furious at the possibility that he was hiding something serious. Once she composed herself, she stood up and decided she'd focus on her prenatal appointment that afternoon. Dr. Cynthia Myers had called to remind her of the checkup, reminding Lia of her health and the health of her baby. That had to be her priority now, no matter the secret swirling around her marriage. When Lia emerged from the bathroom, Darren was gone, leaving only the faint scent of his cologne behind. On the kitchen table lay a single piece of paper, work meeting. "See you this evening." The handwriting was hurried, lacking its usual careful flourish. Lia pressed a hand to her abdomen. She wished Darren would attend the appointment with her, but he'd offered no such sign, no acknowledgement it was even happening. The last time they talked about a prenatal checkup, he'd been too busy expanding the Henderson Group's brand into overseas markets. The thought left a bitter taste in Lia's mouth. Standing alone in the spacious living room, Lia felt the baby kick gently inside her. It was a small reminder that something precious still existed, even if her world was about to turn upside down. She had no inkling just how shattering the day's events would be. The corridors of Dr. Myers's clinic bustled with expectant mothers and nervous fathers. Lia arrived alone, anxiety churning in her stomach. She glanced around, hoping just maybe Darren would burst through the door at the last minute, declaring he couldn't miss seeing their child on the ultrasound. But he never came. Taking a seat in the waiting area, she tried to calm her mind. The decor was cheerful, pastel walls lined with photos of infants and birth announcements. A stuffed giraffe in the corner presided over a kids' play area. It was all meant to soothe, but Lia felt only dread. To distract herself, she scrolled through messages on her phone. A new email from her friend, Patricia Green, caught her attention. Patricia was a longtime friend who worked at Glendale Memorial Hospital in Los Angeles. She had once seen Darren there on a supposed business trip, but never mentioned anything suspicious, just a passing comment that he'd been with a female colleague. Could that colleague have been Chloe? Her mind spiraled as the nurse called, "Miss S. Henderson, the doctor is ready for you." Lia exhaled and stepped into the examination room. Inside, Dr. Myers greeted her warmly. "How's our little superstar today?" she asked with a bright smile. She guided Lia onto the examination table and began the routine checks. But before the ultrasound could begin, Dr. Myers's phone beeped. She excused herself to check a note from one of her associates, leaving Lia to her thoughts. Moments later, the door to the adjacent room opened. Lia heard two voices, one distinctly male, the other female. Her pulse quickened at the familiarity of the male voice. It was Darren. Gently, she slid off the table. Heart pounding, she inched the door open just enough to peek through the narrow gap. There, in the adjoining examination area, stood Darren with his arm around a striking brunette. The woman wore a designer dress that clung to her slight baby bump. Lia's eyes went wide with disbelief. Her husband was tenderly supporting this woman, whispering soothing words as a different doctor, Nancy Friedman, recognized from the hallway, prepared an ultrasound probe. "How are you feeling, Chloe?" Darren asked, his voice filled with concern. Chloe, the name that had haunted Lia all morning. The same name from his hushed phone call. Chloe looked up at him with a grateful smile, tears brightening her eyes. "I'm nervous, but I'm so glad you're here," she said softly. "This means the world to me." Lia's heart hammered like it might burst from her chest. She stumbled back into her own examination room, slumping against the wall. Her ears rang. The father of her child was nurturing someone else's unborn baby. Her breath caught in her throat, and she was unsure if she would scream or faint or both. Within a minute, Dr. Myers returned, exuding her usual professionalism. She noticed the pallor on Lia's face. "My dear, are you all right?" Forcing a trembling smile, Lia shook her head. I'm not feeling well. Could we postpone the ultrasound for a moment?" Dr. Myers approached gently, placing a hand on Lia's shoulder. "We can give you a minute. Would you like some water?" Lia nodded. "Please." The doctor slipped out again. Once alone, Lia felt the hot rush of tears streaming down her face. She stared at the floor, her world tilting. The man she shared her life with, the father of her child, was entangled in another pregnancy. And it seemed he cared deeply about that baby, perhaps more than he did about theirs. Her phone buzzed in her purse, making her flinch. It was a message from Darren. "Sorry, busy day at the office. Will be home late." A wave of nausea roiled in her stomach as the betrayal solidified. His lies were unending. The tears would not stop. In that moment, Lia's hopes crumbled. She had to know why, how long, and what Darren was planning. The greatest shock of all was seeing with her own eyes just how lovingly he touched another woman's pregnant belly. She realized she stood on the precipice of a life-altering revelation, one that would forever redefine her marriage, her family, and the child growing inside her. That night, Lia sat alone at the dining table in the penthouse, the city's lights glimmering far below. The clock read 9:14 p.m., and Darren was still not home. She had skipped dinner, her appetite devoured by heartache. Once, this table had hosted elaborate meals and lively conversation. Tonight, it witnessed only silent desperation. Unable to bear the stillness, she picked up her phone and called Patricia Green. Patricia had always been honest, even if it meant saying things Lia didn't want to hear. When Patricia answered, Lia's voice quivered. "I'm in trouble," she whispered. On the other end, Patricia's voice softened. "Tell me everything." In halting sentences, Lia recounted the clinic incident. She left out no detail: the look in Darren's eyes, the tenderness with which he had touched Chloe's belly, the anguish in Lia's own heart. The silence on the line afterward was deafening. Finally, Patricia spoke. "Lia, I don't want to cause you more pain, but I've seen Darren with that woman too. It was about 3 months ago in LA. He introduced her as his business associate. She looked sick, so I offered assistance. I never suspected she might be pregnant." Lia's throat constricted. "Why didn't you tell me? I didn't have proof of anything. Your marriage was strong, and I didn't want to plant unnecessary doubts. If only I knew." They spoke for nearly an hour, Patricia offering her unwavering support. By the end of it, Lia's tears had subsided to a numb acceptance. She ended the call with gratitude, but felt hollow inside. She needed more answers. At nearly midnight, Darren finally walked through the door. His hair was slightly disheveled, tie loose around his neck. He froze when he saw Lia standing in the middle of the living room like a statue. "You're still up," he murmured, attempting a smile. "I had a work dinner." "Don't." Lia cut him off, voice trembling with suppressed anger. "Don't insult my intelligence anymore." His gaze flickered with guilt or alarm. She couldn't tell. "Lia, you're upset. Let's talk in the morning." She shook her head, tears threatening to spill again. "I saw you today at Dr. Myers's clinic." Darren's face blanched. In that moment, the world seemed to stand still between them. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. "The woman you were with, Chloe, she's pregnant with your child, isn't she?" For a second, Darren's expression dissolved into shock, as though he couldn't believe he'd been caught so abruptly. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Yes," he whispered, shoulders sagging. "I'm sorry." In that instant, an invisible cord snapped in Lia's chest. She wanted to rage, to scream at him, but she had no voice left for fury. Her tears spilled silently instead. "How? How long?" she asked, voice cracking. He looked at the floor. "A little over 4 months. It was a mistake. One, I never meant for it to happen." Lia wrapped her arms around herself, feeling as though she were suffocating. For so long she had tried for a baby with Darren, endured every heartbreak together. She wanted him present, supportive. "How could you do this? We're married. We're about to have our child, and you're having another with someone else." "It was once," Darren murmured, eyes pleading. "One night of weakness, months ago, after a business event. She told me she was pregnant a few weeks later, but I didn't believe her. Then she showed me proof." "Lia, you have to believe me, it's been complicated. She threatened to go public if I didn't help her." A flash of rage finally broke through Lia's shock. "Oh, so you're a victim now. You let another woman carry your child, and you're painting yourself as trapped." He reached for her, but she recoiled. "I've tried to handle this on my own, so it wouldn't hurt you. I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Losing your precious public image, your business deals," Lia spat. Darren's face crumpled. "Afraid of losing you," he said quietly. "I love you, Lia. I love our baby. I wanted to protect you." But the words felt hollow in the wake of betrayal. Lia's tears flowed freely as she shook her head. She couldn't look at him anymore. "Get out," she whispered, her voice trembling. He hesitated, eyes full of remorse. But he did as she asked. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Lia alone with the echoes of a broken marriage and an unimaginable pain. The following day, Lia woke to find Darren gone. He had sent a text saying he'd be at the company's downtown office, giving her space. Part of her was glad for the reprieve. She needed time to gather her thoughts, to piece together a path forward. Yet, despite her rage and sorrow, Lia was determined not to be blindsided again. She needed to learn more about Chloe. Why was Darren so desperate to keep her hidden? Was there more to the story than a brief affair? Gathering her courage, Lia searched Darren's study. He was meticulous about his business files, storing them in locked drawers. But she had the key. He had given it to her years ago, back when trust wasn't just a memory. Inside she found a manila folder labeled Chloe Matthews Private. Her heart thumped. She opened it gingerly. Pages of receipts, medical bills, and legal documents spilled out. The earliest date was nearly 4 months ago, corresponding exactly to the timeline Darren had given her. Skimming through the bills, Lia saw that Darren had paid for Chloe's prenatal vitamins, checkups, and even a discreet rental property under a shell company's name. The address was in a high-end neighborhood across the city. She also found a letter from a private investigator mentioning that Chloe had a past financial dispute with a previous partner, a dispute that ended in a quiet settlement. So she was no innocent bystander. With mounting intrigue, Lia read on. Chloe had demanded monthly support that far exceeded typical child support guidelines. And Darren, it seemed, was paying it without protest. Lia's vision blurred with tears, but she refused to let heartbreak blind her. She realized that for Chloe, having Darren's baby might be more than an accident. It could be a calculated move. That afternoon, determined to hear Chloe's side, Lia made a decision that would change her life forever. She hailed a taxi to the address she had found. After a short ride, she arrived at a sleek, modern condominium tower overlooking the Hudson River. The doorman seemed accustomed to wealthy visitors and let Lia in without questions once she gave Chloe's name. Finding apartment. 23D, she knocked, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. The door opened slowly, revealing Chloe, who looked startled and pale at the sight of Lia. She wore a silk robe over a flowing maternity slip, her bump more noticeable than it had been at the clinic. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Finally, Lia cleared her throat. "May I come in?" Chloe hesitated, eyes darting behind Lia, as though expecting Darren or someone else. Then, with a tight nod, she stepped aside. The inside of the apartment was tastefully decorated, a testament to Darren's generous support. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a breathtaking view of the skyline. Chloe gestured for Lia to sit on a plush white sofa. "Well, this is unexpected," Chloe said, her voice steady. "1. I'm sorry you had to find out this way." Lia studied the woman before her, young, undeniably beautiful, but with a certain hardened edge behind her eyes. "I don't care about your apologies," Lia replied, struggling to keep her composure. "I just want the truth. Why are you doing this?" Chloe's eyes flickered. "Because I'm pregnant. Because Darren decided to be involved. I didn't force him." Shaking her head, Lia pressed on. "Don't play games. I saw the documents. You've demanded a lot of money. Is this about revenge? Greed?" A flicker of annoyance crossed Chloe's face, but she hid it well. Darren Henderson is a millionaire. We all know it. He has responsibilities, including this child. If you had caught your husband cheating earlier, maybe you wouldn't be in this mess. Lia's hands balled into fists. So you admit you seduced him for financial gain? Chloe let out a short laugh. Seduce? He's no saint. Believe me, your husband was a willing participant. But yes, I knew what I was doing once I found out I was pregnant. I won't pretend otherwise. She placed a hand protectively over her belly. But don't think for a second I don't care for my baby. I'm not heartless. Tears burned in Lia's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. What I don't understand is why Darren is so desperate to keep this hidden. Are you blackmailing him? Chloe's chin lifted, her gaze unwavering. I have a past. And Darren, well, let's just say he's done things to expand his empire that the public might not look kindly on. If I talk, it could ruin him. I told him it's not a threat, just reality. He's decided to stay close to protect you and his business interests. The admission stung. So that was the heart of Darren's secrecy, a combination of shame, fear, and damage control. Lia stood, unwilling to stay under this roof any longer. I'm pregnant with his child too, she said, voice shaking. And unlike you, I married him for love, not money. Chloe smirked, but there was sadness in her eyes. Then prove it to him. Fight for him if you really want him. Lia felt revulsion curling in her stomach. Fight for him? After what you've done? You have no idea what love is. She turned to leave, but paused at the door. If you ever threaten my baby's future, I won't stay silent, Chloe. I will fight for my child's right to a decent father, even if that father is a traitor. Without waiting for a reply, Lia strode out, her heart pounding. The confrontation had left her raw with anger and heartbreak, but at least she finally understood the twisted web that bound Darren and Chloe. Lia vowed that she would find a way to protect her unborn child from this storm, no matter what it took. In the days that followed, Lia spiraled between anger, sadness, and brief flashes of determination. She scheduled an emergency therapy session with Dr. Helena Brooks, a counselor who specialized in couples and family issues. Lia knew she needed professional help to navigate the emotional wreckage Darren had created. Sitting across from Dr. Brooks in a cozy office decorated with calming pastel colors, Lia recounted the entire ordeal. The therapist listened intently, nodding with understanding. When Lia finished, her voice shaky, Dr. Brooks offered a gentle smile. You're going through a profound betrayal, she said softly. What Darren did was wrong, and it will take time, maybe a lot of time, to process it. Right now, focus on your emotional and physical well-being for the sake of your baby. Stress and heartbreak can affect both of you. Lia nodded. So what do I do? I can't just pretend everything's fine, but I also can't self-destruct. Assert your boundaries, the therapist advised. Decide what you can handle. If you want Darren to leave for a while, you have that right. If you want to seek legal advice, you can. These are your choices. You can also choose to talk to him and see if there's a future to salvage. Salvaging the marriage? Lia's heart clenched. Could she ever trust Darren again? The father of her baby was also fathering a child with another woman, and that mistress was openly manipulative. Yet, memories of happier times flickered through her mind. She didn't want to throw everything away without understanding the full scope of Darren's feelings and intentions. Later that night, Lia found Darren waiting for her in the living room. He had placed a bouquet of pink peonies on the coffee table, her favorite flowers. She felt an odd pang of sorrow. Once, such a gesture would have made her smile. Now it felt like a plaster on a deep wound. I'm sorry, he said, voice trembling with sincerity. I want to fix this, Lia. She stood by the doorway, arms folded. Is that even possible? He swallowed hard. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Lia's eyes flickered with tears. What does that mean? Are you ending things with Chloe? He nodded. I have to support her financially because of the baby, but I have no intention of continuing any personal relationship. I made it clear to her. The mention of personal relationship made Lia's anger flare. You had no business having a personal relationship in the first place. Do you even understand how badly you've hurt me? Yes, Darren said, his eyes glistening. It kills me to see you like this. I hate myself for my mistake. Genuine remorse was etched on his face, but Lia couldn't let herself be swayed by emotion alone. So what? You want us to go back to normal? Pretend Chloe doesn't exist? He shook his head. No, we can't ignore what happened. But I promise to be transparent from now on. I'll accept whatever consequences come, as long as you know that I still love you and want to be a family. A long silence followed, broken only by the hum of the city outside. Lia thought of the baby growing inside her. Did she want her child to grow up without a father's presence? Or with a father whose loyalty was questionable? Finally, she said, I'm seeing a therapist. I think you should too, if we're going to try. If there's even a chance, we need professional help. Darren exhaled with relief. I'll do it. Whatever you say. Exhausted, Lia sank onto the couch. He tentatively sat beside her, not daring to touch her without permission. She looked down at the peonies, their delicate pink petals almost mocking the rawness of her emotions. Chloe told me she threatened to expose some shady business deals of yours, Lia said quietly. Is that true? He hesitated. There were some aggressive takeover strategies I used for the Henderson group. Nothing illegal, but not exactly squeaky clean. If news outlets got wind, it would tarnish my reputation. Our reputation. Lia let out a hollow laugh. Do you still think it's use after everything? Darren sighed, leaning forward, head in his hands. I don't know. I'm just trying to hold on to any chance you might give me. In that moment, Lia realized how tangled their lives were, financially, emotionally, socially. Darren's betrayal had cut her deeply, but she still loved him, or at least the memory of the man she once adored. The question was whether they could ever rebuild trust on the rubble of heartbreak. With a shaky voice, she said, I'm not making any promises, but for now, we stay civil. We go to counseling, and we see how things unfold with Chloe and her child. He nodded, grateful tears lining his eyes. Thank you. As midnight approached, Lia retreated to the master bedroom alone, leaving Darren to sleep in the guest room. She lay awake, one hand on her belly, feeling the gentle flutter of her baby's movements. She whispered a silent vow. No matter how messy this situation became, she would do whatever it took to protect her child's future, whether that meant staying with Darren or walking away forever. 2 weeks later, Lia found herself in Dr. Brooks's office again, but this time Darren was by her side. He appeared nervous, hands clasped together, foot tapping against the plush carpet. Lia had insisted they try couples therapy, but just being in the same room brought a surge of conflicting emotions. Dr. Brooks began the session gently. Lia, Darren, the first understand we have a challenging situation. Would you each like to share how you're feeling? Darren looked at Lia, waiting for her to speak first. She took a shaky breath. I'm still angry and hurt, but I'm also confused. Part of me wants to work things out. Part of me wants to run. He nodded, guilt etched in every line of his face. I understand. And I deserve that. I'm committed to owning my mistake, to supporting you and our baby. Dr. Brooks nodded. Darren, could you elaborate on the circumstances around Chloe? There might be layers. Lia needs to hear. He swallowed, gaze flicking toward Lia. After the fundraiser that night, I had too much to drink. Chloe was there, one of our event coordinators. We ended up together. I regretted it immediately. When she told me she was pregnant, I tried to pay her off discreetly, but she demanded more attention, financial support. She threatened to contact the press, blackmail me for my business deals. He paused, voice trembling. But that's no excuse. I was weak. I betrayed you, Lia. Tears welled in Lia's eyes, but she blinked them away. Why didn't you tell me earlier? We've always talked through everything, because I was ashamed, Darren whispered, and terrified. We had been trying for a baby for so long. I couldn't stand the thought of losing you when our dream was finally coming true. I know it's twisted, but I thought I was protecting you. A long silence followed. Lia stared at the tissues in her hand, her mind a whirlwind. Dr. Brooks leaned forward. Lia, trust is essential in any marriage. Darren's actions have fractured that trust. Are you open to working on rebuilding it? She glanced at Darren, seeing the raw emotion in his eyes. Images of him with Chloe still haunted her, yet she also saw the sincerity in his remorse. Yes, she said softly, I'm willing to try for our baby. But Darren, this is on you to prove you're worthy of a second chance. One misstep, and I'm done. Darren let out a breath of relief. I'll do whatever it takes. The rest of the session revolved around practical steps, honest communication, therapy exercises, boundaries. Darren was to sever all non-essential contact with Chloe beyond mandatory legal obligations. Lia would have full access to his phone and business dealings if she wished to review them. It felt extreme, but both realized that extraordinary circumstances demanded extraordinary measures. Later, as they left Dr. Brooks's office, Darren turned to Lia. Will you have dinner with me? Somewhere quiet, away from everything. She hesitated, but eventually nodded. Okay, but let's keep it simple. They dined at a small Italian restaurant near Central Park, a place they used to frequent during their dating days. The hostess greeted them warmly, placing them in a corner booth by a large picture window. The ambience was intimate, the soft glow of candles casting gentle shadows. They talked about mundane things, at first the baby's development, plans for the nursery. Darren listened attentively, occasionally offering to share new ideas. Yet an undercurrent of tension remained, the unspoken reality that their lives had irrevocably changed. Halfway through the meal, Lia looked down at her plate of half-eaten pasta and spoke quietly. I visited Chloe. Darren froze, fork clinking against the plate. You did? Yes. I wanted to see for myself who she was, what she wanted, Lia said, voice trembling slightly. One, she's manipulative, Darren. She's not just a victim in this. Be careful. He nodded, swallowing hard. I know. I learned that the hard way. I'm so sorry. They left the restaurant holding a fragile sense of understanding. Darren offered his arm, and Lia accepted it, albeit tentatively. As they stepped outside, a gust of night air ruffled their hair. For the first time in weeks, Lia felt a tiny seed of hope taking root. Perhaps they could weather this storm together. But as she and Darren drove back to the penthouse, neither could ignore the looming reality. Chloe was still pregnant, still a threat to their fragile reconciliation. And one way or another, the next confrontation was inevitable. A soft knock on the penthouse door startled Lia. She had just finished stacking baby clothes in the nursery's new dresser, her mind preoccupied with color-coding onesies and tiny socks. Darren was at work, and she wasn't expecting visitors. Opening the door, she was surprised to see Colton Ainsworth, Darren's longtime friend and business attorney. Colton's tall frame filled the doorway, his expression grim under dark, neatly combed hair. Lia, may I come in? He asked, his voice low and urgent. She invited him inside, leading him to the living room. Colton looked around at the neatly arranged furniture, pausing to glance at the baby photos pinned to a corkboard on the wall, ultrasound pictures, capturing the little life growing within her. I'm here on Darren's behalf, Colton began, settling on a leather armchair. He asked me to assist in legal matters regarding Chloe. Lia stiffened, memories of her tense meeting with Chloe flashing through her mind. What exactly does that mean? Chloe's been pushing for a more formal arrangement beyond what Darren's currently providing. She wants a long-term contract guaranteeing financial support, housing, even a stake in Henderson Group's stock for the child's future. Lia's anger flared. Stock in the company? She's trying to latch on to Darren's fortune, that's what this is. Colton nodded. I've reviewed her initial requests. Some are standard for a paternity settlement, others are excessive. She also suggested that she might make life difficult if Darren doesn't agree to her terms. Lia felt the sting of fresh betrayal. Even if Darren was the one who made the mistake, Chloe was trying to exploit it for every last cent. Does Darren know all this? He does, and he wants to push back. But he's concerned about how a public scandal could harm both you and the company. She sank onto the couch, a weary sigh escaping her lips. I can't believe we're in this mess. Colton offered a sympathetic smile. Darren's determined to protect you. He asked me to convey that he's sorry for dragging you into this. We're trying to negotiate with Chloe's lawyer, but it might get ugly. Lia swallowed hard. She never imagined her pregnancy would be overshadowed by legal battles over Darren's infidelity. Still, a spark of resolve ignited in her chest. I want to be involved in any major decisions, she said firmly. Chloe might be carrying his baby, but I'm his wife, and I have a right to protect my family. Absolutely, Colton agreed. We'll keep you in the loop. You have my number. After he left, Lia paced the living room, adrenaline coursing through her. She had to do more than passively watch from the sidelines. She considered contacting Patricia Green again, hoping her friend might have insights on dealing with pregnant women in precarious medical and emotional states. Chloe's condition, after all, could complicate legal moves if stress harmed the unborn child. The last thing Lia wanted was to be seen as the villain harming an unborn baby. Before she could make the call, her phone buzzed. Darren's name flashed on the screen. She answered, her voice terse. I heard from Colton, she said by way of greeting. A heavy sigh echoed on the other end. Yes, this is escalating quickly. I'm sorry, Lia. You deserve peace and happiness right now. She bit her lip, resisting the urge to lash out. We both made choices that led us here. Yours are obviously bigger than mine, but let's move forward with a plan. He sounded relieved. Thank you. Let's set a meeting with Colton and the team. Figure out our stance and what we're willing to negotiate. Fine. She hesitated. And Darren, let me be clear, I will never accept Chloe's demands that threaten our child's future. Understood. I'm behind you, Darren said softly. After hanging up, Lia stared at her reflection in the mirror across the room. She hardly recognized the woman, gazing back, eyes ringed with exhaustion, face drawn with worry. Where was the buoyant mother to be, happily anticipating a future with her loving husband? In her place stood someone else, a mother fighting tooth and nail for her child's stability, a wife unsure whether her marriage could be saved, but unwilling to let a cunning mistress strip her of everything. A swirl of conflicting emotions tightened in her chest: fear, anger, heartbreak, and a flicker of resolve. She knew the situation was about more than love or money now. It was about survival of her marriage, her unborn child's security, and her own sense of identity. And in that survival, strange alliances could form even with people she once viewed as potential enemies. The battle lines were drawn. The next moves would determine her family's fate. A tense hush fell over the law firm's conference room as Lia, Darren, Colton, and several other legal advisors waited. They had gathered to negotiate with Chloe's attorney, a shrewd woman named Alexis Friedman, who had a reputation for winning lucrative settlements for her clients. The polished wooden table was lined with papers, contracts, and untouched cups of coffee. Lia's heart pounded. She glanced across the table at Darren. He offered a small, reassuring nod, though his brow glistened with perspiration. On Lia's other side, Colton looked composed, but she could sense his tension in the way he meticulously clicked his pen. Moments later, Chloe entered. She wore a form-fitting black dress that accentuated her baby bump. Alexis Friedman, a tall woman in a sharply tailored suit, followed. They took their seats opposite Lia and Darren. "Thank you for meeting with us," Alexis began, in a cool, measured tone. "We understand this is a delicate situation." Chloe cast a glance at Lia, who met it with quiet resolve. Though Lia felt a surge of anger at the woman who had upended her life, she willed herself to remain calm for the sake of her baby. Colton exchanged a few preliminary pleasantries before Alexis presented Chloe's demands. 1. Monthly child support well above standard guidelines. 2. A trust fund of substantial value for the child. 3. An upscale residence maintained by Darren until the child turned 18.4. Partial stake in Henderson Group shares to secure the child's future. Lia's eyes widened. This is outrageous. Child support is one thing, but you're talking about a life of luxury paid out of our family's pocket. Alexis's gaze didn't waver. My client believes that the child of a wealthy father should have a lifestyle comparable to that of any other child he supports. Chloe spoke up, her voice calm. "I'm not being greedy. I'm just ensuring my child isn't treated as a second-class family member." A spark of fury shot through Lia. "Don't you dare. My child isn't first class or second class. They're both Darren's kids, but you're demanding an absurd sum. Even a standard paternity settlement wouldn't be this high." Chloe shrugged. "Your husband can afford it. Why fight?" Colton interjected. "We're prepared to offer a fair settlement that covers all child-related expenses, including education and a reasonable trust fund. But partial company ownership, that's non-negotiable." Darren leaned forward, voice strained. "Chloe, think about this carefully. We're offering a supportive arrangement for you and the baby. But if you push too hard, you might end up with less than the standard settlement." Chloe's eyes glinted with defiance. "I know what your empire is worth. I also know the skeletons in your closet. Darren, if I have to go public, I will." Silence gripped the room. Alexis Friedman cleared her throat, trying to rein in her client. "Chloe, let's stay calm." Yet the confrontation had escalated. Lia's anger surged, but she took a deep breath, recalling Dr. Brooks's advice about controlling stress. "Chloe, you're not the only pregnant woman dealing with Darren's child, but you don't see me here blackmailing him." A flash of hurt crossed Darren's face, though he didn't protest. He knew he had little right to speak after causing this chaos. Chloe set her jaw. "I'm protecting myself and my baby. I've seen how easily powerful men discard their mistakes. I won't be discarded." Before Lia could respond, Darren spoke in a calm but steely voice. "You and I both know this wasn't some random accident. You targeted me when I was vulnerable. I'm accepting responsibility for the baby, but you won't bully us into giving away part of the company." Chloe's composure cracked for a moment. Her lips tightened and her gaze dropped to the table. Then she straightened. "Fine, if that's your stance, I'll have to consider other avenues." Alexis Friedman quickly interjected. "We can negotiate further. Let's not make any rash decisions." The tension in the room was electric. Colton suggested a short break to cool tempers. Lia agreed, grateful for the chance to step outside and breathe. She whispered to Darren, "Be careful." She's not bluffing about going public. They stepped into the hallway, the buzz of the law firm's offices all around. Darren squeezed Lia's hand. "I'm sorry for dragging you through this." She swallowed back tears. "Let's just stay united. We can't let her manipulate us." When they returned to the conference room, Alexis proposed a compromise on the trust fund and child support. The stake in Henderson Group was downgraded to a minimal share, essentially a symbolic gesture. Colton argued that a symbolic gesture was still not necessary, but Darren, reading Chloe's expression, decided to allow a small compromise enough to appease her, but not enough to influence the company's decisions. After hours of back and forth, they reached a tentative agreement, a generous child support plan, a trust fund, and coverage for medical expenses. The mention of a small stake in Henderson Group was left ambiguous, to be revisited. A follow-up meeting was scheduled. The meeting ended with no one fully satisfied, but everyone relieved to have avoided a complete implosion for now. As Chloe left, she spared Lia one last glance. It wasn't an apology or even triumph, but something akin to acknowledgement. In that fleeting moment, Lia felt a strange kinship. They were both pregnant. Both had futures bound by one man's choices. Yet the storm was far from over. The next few months would test every fragile thread of Lia and Darren's reconciliation. And with Chloe still threatening to go public if pushed too far, the entire Henderson empire was on shaky ground. Autumn painted the city in fiery hues of gold and crimson. Crisp leaves tumbled along sidewalks, and Lia found a bittersweet comfort in the season's transformation. She, too, was changing, growing stronger, finding clarity in the chaos of her life. Her baby bump was more pronounced, a constant reminder of the reason she had to keep pushing forward. One afternoon, as Lia was leaving a prenatal yoga class recommended by Dr. Myers, she received an unexpected call from a reporter at a lifestyle magazine. The woman's tone was polite but probing, asking about rumors swirling around the Henderson family, something about a scandalous paternity suit. Lia's heart hammered. Chloe's threats were inching closer to reality. "No comment," Lia said firmly, ending the call and quickly texting Darren. "Journalist called me. Heads up," he replied almost instantly. "I'll handle it. Don't worry." But Lia was worried. She realized that the precarious balance they'd achieved could be shattered by a single headline. That night, she confronted Darren. "We need a strategy," she said, her voice tight. "What if Chloe decides to leak everything anyway?" Darren ran a hand through his hair. "I've spoken to a PR firm. If this gets out, we'll issue a statement taking responsibility. I won't let them drag you through the mud, Lia." She looked away, tears stinging her eyes. "You can't control what the press will write." "And how does that help us emotionally?" He gently wrapped his arms around her. "We'll get through this. I know I made a horrible mistake, but I'm here now, and I'm not giving up on us." For the first time in months, she allowed herself to lean into his warmth without flinching. The memory of his betrayal still stung, but his resolve to protect her now felt genuine. Their therapy sessions had revealed his deep remorse, and while trust was slow to rebuild, there was progress, glimpses of the old tenderness that once bound them together. A few days later, Lia was attending an event for a prenatal charity when she felt a painful tightening in her abdomen. Alarmed, she excused herself and hurried to the bathroom. The pain subsided after a minute, but it left her shaken. She realized she had been pushing herself too hard, juggling emotional stress and physical demands. She called Dr. Myers, who recommended immediate rest and asked her to come in for a checkup. Darren, upon hearing the news, rushed from his office to be by her side. In the examination room, Dr. Myers conducted an ultrasound, scanning carefully. "The baby's heartbeat is strong," the doctor said with a reassuring smile. "It looks like stress-induced contractions. Nothing that should lead to premature labor at this point. But you need to take it easy, Lia. Avoid stressful situations when possible." Lia felt tears of relief and frustration. "My life is one big stressful situation right now." Dr. Myers patted her hand. "Lean on your support system. Delegate tasks." This baby's health and yours come first. Darren, who had been quietly watching, took Lia's hand. I'm sorry. I'll do more to shield you from the legal drama. She offered a small nod, still unsure if that was truly possible. But the fear of losing her baby sparked a determination to take proactive steps. At home, Lia asked Darren to speak with Chloe directly about setting boundaries. If Chloe wanted more demands met, she'd have to go through the lawyers, no more text messages or last-minute calls that rattled Lia's nerves. Surprisingly, Chloe agreed to the arrangement, perhaps recognizing that harming Lia's pregnancy would only paint her in a bad light should the story become public. Days turned into weeks with relative calm, though an undercurrent of tension remained. During this time, Lia and Darren grew closer again. Small gestures, a freshly brewed cup of herbal tea when she woke up, a gentle kiss on her forehead before bed reminded Lia of their once intimate bond. She still wrestled with anger and heartbreak, but therapy helped her voice these emotions without lashing out. Darren, in turn, listened earnestly, accepting her pain as a consequence of his actions. As Lia's due date approached, the spectre of Chloe's impending delivery also loomed. It was a strange mirror-like tension, two women carrying Darren's children, both poised to give birth in a matter of weeks. The media had so far only whispered rumors, but Lia sensed that any day now the storm could break. Despite the uncertainty, Lia found a glimmer of hope in Darren's consistency. He attended every prenatal appointment, coached her through breathing exercises, and even started painting a mural in the nursery, a tranquil scene of a sunrise over rolling hills. One evening, as she watched him brush soft colors onto the wall, she felt the baby kick, almost as if to say it, too, sensed a change in the air. Looking at Darren, she saw a man trying to redeem himself, to reclaim the vow he'd broken. And while the road ahead was still fraught with potential pitfalls, for the first time since her world shattered, Lia allowed herself to imagine that maybe, just maybe, they would survive this trial and emerge a stronger family on the other side. In the end, both babies decided to arrive earlier than expected, within days of each other. The final chapter of Lia's tumultuous journey began on a crisp autumn morning, when she felt a series of contractions that didn't fade. Darren rushed her to Dr. Myers' clinic, hands trembling on the steering wheel. The labor was intense, but Lia found unexpected courage in the midst of her pain. She gripped Darren's hand, gasping through each contraction, remembering every tear, every betrayal, every moment of doubt that had led them here. As she pushed, she thought not just of the child about to be born, but of the family she hoped to salvage. Hours later, a piercing cry filled the delivery room. Dr. Myers handed a squirming, red-faced infant into Lia's trembling arms. A baby boy, perfect in every way, tiny fingers and toes, a robust set of lungs. Tears streamed down Lia's cheeks as she cradled him against her chest. Darren stood beside her, tears in his own eyes, gently stroking his son's soft cheek. In that moment, something within Lia shifted, an indescribable sense of love, hope, and fragile forgiveness blossomed. She locked eyes with Darren, both of them wordless but connected by the miracle in her arms. 2 days later, as Lia and her baby rested at home, word arrived that Chloe had gone into labor. Darren's phone chimed with an urgent message from Colton. Chloe's delivering. She's asking for you at the hospital. Lia watched Darren with cautious eyes, waiting to see how he would respond. He exhaled slowly. She said she needs someone there. She has no other family. It could be a stunt or genuine. I'm not sure. Lia felt her heart twist. Despite everything, Chloe was alone. And that baby was Darren's child too. With a sigh, she handed him his car keys. Go, she said, her voice surprisingly gentle, but come back soon. He hesitated, tears in his eyes, as he bent to kiss her forehead and their sleeping son. I'll be back as soon as I can. Thank you for understanding. It was nearly midnight when Darren returned. He looked exhausted, emotionally drained. He sank onto the edge of the bed, stroking Lia's hair with trembling fingers. She had a girl, he said. Chloe named her Victoria. The birth was complicated. She lost a lot of blood. She's stable now, but she asked me to promise I'd care for Victoria if anything happened to her. A surge of conflicting emotions tore through Lia. Compassion and jealousy warred within her, along with a strange sense of kinship. She remembered those terrifying hours of labor, how vulnerable she felt. No woman should endure that alone. Taking a deep breath, Lia said softly, "Then we'll ensure Victoria is cared for. She's innocent in all this." Darren's eyes filled with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you for your kindness." She managed a small, weary smile. "We're all flawed, Darren, but our children deserve better than our mistakes." In the weeks that followed, Lia and Darren established an uneasy but functional routine. They hired a nanny for their son so Lia could rest and recover. Darren made arrangements to support Chloe and Victoria, abiding by the terms negotiated through Colton and Alexis Friedman. As rumors of the Henderson scandal circulated, the family released a carefully worded statement acknowledging Darren's paternity for the second child and affirming his commitment to his family, both children included. Public reaction was mixed. Some tabloids had a field day, branding Chloe a gold digger and Darren a philanderer. But eventually, the media frenzy calmed, overshadowed by newer scandals elsewhere. In private, Lia endured flashbacks of the pain and betrayal. But each time, she looked into her son's bright eyes and found the will to focus on the future. Darren, for his part, was a changed man. His once laser-focused approach to business acquisitions softened. He spent more time at home, read parenting books, and took on late-night feeding duties. He visited Victoria regularly to ensure her well-being, making no secret of this to Lia. Transparency, after all, was their new cornerstone if they were to rebuild trust. Months passed. The city slid into winter, and within the penthouse's walls, a new kind of peace settled, fragile yet real. Lia still felt the sting of betrayal at times, but therapy and Darren's unwavering effort helped. She saw genuine remorse in him, a man determined to be a better husband and father than he had been before. One chilly morning, Lia stood by the nursery window, cradling her son in her arms. The sunlight danced across the baby's face, highlighting his tiny features. She thought of Chloe and Victoria, mother and daughter, forging their own path. Despite the damage done, she silently wished them well. They too were part of Darren's life now, for better or worse. Darren approached, wrapping an arm around Lia's waist. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving me another chance." She leaned into his warmth, pressing her cheek against his shoulder. "We're a family," she murmured, voice thick with emotion. "Not a perfect one, but ours." And as the snow began to fall outside, glistening flakes drifting past the tall windows, Lia closed her eyes and clutched her son closer. In that hush of new beginnings, she realized that even the deepest wounds could begin to heal with time, honesty, and the fragile strength of love. Our story of pregnant wife visits doctor, only to see millionaire husband supporting mistress at prenatal checkup, brings us face to face with heartbreak, betrayal, and the resilience that only love and determination can summon. Lia Henderson's tumultuous journey tested the very foundation of her marriage, her sanity, and the future she'd envisioned for her child. Yet, through therapy, earnest repentance from her husband, and the unwavering drive to protect their baby, Lia discovered a delicate thread of hope in the shadow of infidelity. As the storm settles, a new dawn emerges, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, we can find compassion and forgiveness. If this story moved or inspired you in any way, we invite you to like, share and subscribe to our channel. Spread the word and let others join in this dramatic, heartfelt journey of redemption and second chances. Thank you for watching.